Today, I want to inform you about the storied history of shelters, adoption, and the process of rescuing and adopting a pet of your own. Did you know that an average of 7.6 million cats and dogs are brought to shelters in the United States each year? Of those cats and dogs, over 1/3 will be euthanized for various reasons. The most common reason is that there is nobody to adopt them, and the shelter just cannot afford to place or take care of them. I want to inform you about the history of shelters, pet adoption, and the process of rescuing and adopting a pet of your own. Pet rescue is very important to me because all my animals are rescues. I have two cats, Callie and Nala. We found Callie on the side of the road after she had been hit by a car, and she was only just a couple weeks old. And we actually had to get her front right leg amputated, and it was very traumatic for her. And Nala, we also found her on the side of the road just as a kitten when we rescued her. I also have 3 dogs that we rescued from bad homes, and their names are Claire, Ruby, and Allie. My goal today is to inform you about the history of shelters and adoption, the process of adopting a pet, and the costs associated with adopting and caring for a new pet. Let's start by exploring the early history of shelters. Pet shelters were originally formed in the earliest 20th century. In the beginning, pet shelters existed for 2 reasons: for people to find their lost pets or to keep strays off the streets. Early shelters also provided what believed to be a humane death for animals who were suffering. It was not until 1950 that the adoption became the main focal point of shelters process. So now let's discuss the revolution of the adoption process. The revolution made it so more pets were being saved than the original adoption process. In 1970, the adoption criteria was based on previous instances of neglect and cruelty. The criteria grew over time as new instances of neglect and cruelty surfaced. In 1999, the adoption criteria was changed because it was deemed too extensive after the 2 animal rights activists were denied in the adoption process. It led to 4 main criteria that all shelters are to follow. The first being drunk or otherwise intoxicated. The second is hoarders. The third is people with a history of abuse. And the fourth is people who intend to use animals for food. Now that you have the basic understanding of the history for the adoption process, I will help you determine what pet fits your personality and is compatible for your personality. So what animal is right for your lifestyle? Your work schedule, your social life, and your exercise level are all important when choosing an animal for your pet. So for example, if you don't really like to exercise a lot, then a dog that requires a lot of exercise is not a good choice for you. But if you are very active, you love to exercise, then a dog that loves being outside, loves to go for walks, then that is a dog for you. So what pet fits your personality? Your emotional capacity is very an important factor when considering adoption. Another factor to consider is if you want a pet that requires your undivided attention, or if you want a pet that doesn't require much attention. Now that you know the factors you should consider when adopting, you should also know the cost of how much it takes to take care of a pet. The cost for adopting a dog is anywhere from $35 to $65. So while a cat costs $25 to $45 to adopt, the cost for carrying a dog as a whole is around $2,000 a year, and that covers vet visits, grooming, and food. While a cat is normally $200 to $700 a year between food and cat litter if your cat is an inside cat. Both cats and dogs will cost a little more if you want to feed them the high-end food, but that is completely your preference. It all just depends what you want to feed them. I hope that I informed you and inspired you to consider adoption before purchasing from a puppy mill or a breeder. Thank you for listening to my speech on pet rescue.